was not organized under any particular ministry. There are ministries that were in existence which were national in nature and were prayer ministries. They helped give guidance. One of these ministries gave out a paper called Destiny, and every now and then they would give guidance, and people would just pass it on from one to another, talking about what to pray for, how to pray for it, what to pray against, what to break, and some principles from the Bible. 2 years of this kind of travail, and the change came. And healing began, the restoration began, and God began to turn the nation around. And a few years down the road, we had a third crisis. This was very different from the first two because it was not managed by man, it was not government, it was not from the government. This was HIV and AIDS. I remember a day, now I can say in the first crisis I was only a young boy. I was 9 years old, I remember the day Idi Amin was overthrown. But I was part of that praying movement as a young child, joining up with others. I was in a boarding school, and we used to hold prayer meetings every evening and every morning. And part of our prayer item was, God, come to our help. Christianity in this nation is not going to die away. Islam is not going to take over. Later on in the Obote regime, I was a young teenager, and I was not in any leadership of any sort, but I was part of the prayer movement, and I witnessed a lot of things God did. In the third move of God, I was a young pastor who had just been in ministry a few years, and one day we had an invitation from a government minister to attend a meeting as pastors. And at this meeting, this minister who was born again and working in the office of the president, read to us a statement from the World Health Organization. It was not like speaking in firm nature. It was saying Uganda could probably be the nation worst hit by AIDS among all the nations of the world. They said, according to all research, Uganda seems to have the highest prevalence levels of AIDS among all the nations. At that time, our prevalence levels for AIDS were 34%. Today, unfortunately, there are countries that have gone even over that, like Botswana, South Africa, Swaziland, and a few others. But at that time, we were the highest. And then they made a prediction that because of the rate at which AIDS is being passed on from one person to another, and there being no cure, there is a possibility that within 10 years, which was something like 2000, by the year 2000, this nation may have lost 30% of its population to AIDS alone. And it will have another 30% of its population with HIV. And they will be on their way to full-blown AIDS and death. They say the remaining 40% may be children and old people, and there's no doubt they will not be able to sustain the economy of this land, of this nation. So they were saying this is likely to be a failed state in about 10 years. So the nations need to start thinking about what are we going to do with this state of Uganda. This minister read to us that statement and then said, I speak for government. Government has got no solution. The medical world has got no answers. And the international community has got nothing. Only God can help us in this matter. Says that's why I invited you here as pastors to say, will you go back and mobilize the nation to pray? Now, it's wonderful when government turns to church for an answer, but that was not the most wonderful way to be called upon. We had no answers ourselves. We didn't have faith at all. In fact, the immediate response was murmuring and complaining against God. People would ask questions like, what did we do to God that he would be putting Uganda under crisis after crisis? But it's a long story, and I'll not go into that right now. But that day, it was a Saturday, we prayed from morning to evening, and towards that evening, God gave us a prophetic word that completely changed our understanding of prayer, praying for the nation, and praying for revival. It changed everything that we thought we knew. It set us on a course to seek the Lord, to seek to understand, to seek to learn. It was out of that God began to teach us the principles of his working with whole nations, with the cities, and with the powers of darkness that cover whole peoples. It's out of that that we came to lay hold of principles that today I can stand anywhere in the world and say, if any people anywhere in the world would humble themselves, lay hold of these principles, and put them to work in humility and follow the Lord, God will not take 10 years to answer that prayer. God will not need 5 years to begin to make a change. And I can say that confidently. I can say that because I've witnessed it. But later on, as we followed it, we saw God move. We saw God change. Today, Uganda is held up as the model. It's the nation that has had the greatest success worldwide of dealing with AIDS. The entire U.S. policy on helping nations worldwide fight AIDS is based on what Uganda has developed. The prevalence levels were lowered from 34% to 6%. And in some parts of the country, especially among the young generation, 25 and below, it is 3%. Today, not only did we seek God for an answer to a problem, God began to bring in principles of a holier way of living and conducting our lives, which is especially gripping the young generation. Today you have young people at university level who 10, 13 years ago were only 9 years, 8 years, and a special message began to go out to them that God has created you for destiny. God has a purpose with your life. If you choose, like Daniel, not to defile yourself and keep yourself pure for the Lord, you will give him opportunity to make you the vessel he wants you to be. That campaign was started by the First Lady, the wife of the President, who is a beloved, born-again Christian, not ashamed of her faith. And it began to go out into schools, targeting children between 8 years and 11 years, or 12 years. It was reasoned that even if someone had an early sexual experience, like becoming sexually active, normally those years would not be expected to be sexually active. So the message targeted that window. And as they grew, the message moved with them. Today, that section of young people with whom the message started, they are all in university. They are early 20s. A survey was made about 2 years ago in the universities of Uganda to see the fruit. And they found 35% of university students have never been sexually active. Why? They chose to keep themselves for the destiny God has got for them. Glory to the name of the Lord. What does that say? It was not just meeting a crisis, it's developing a whole generation of young lives whose dream is to be available to God to do whatever he wants with them. You may not even comprehend what a miracle this is, to have a whole generation of young people whose one dream is, I want to see God fulfill the purpose he created me for. And I'll keep myself pure for that. And I'll keep following him. We don't know what that generation is